Now, you may ask why we're going to talk about politics in a series of lectures about the scientific revolution, because when people tend to think of politics, you think of yelling, punching, screaming, bad political ads claiming that your opponent, kicks dogs. You don't think of science. It seems the most unscientific of fields possible. But what I want to highlight is the way in which science starts to influence even how people think about politics. And the first figure that we're going to look at is someone that we've talked about before. This is your chance to finally see what he looks like. This is Thomas Hobbes. So what makes Thomas Hobbes scientific? And indeed, not only scientific, but hated during his lifetime. Indeed, after the Great Fire of London, for example, most people believe that it was God's judgment against the state of England for tolerating the existence of such a man. Well, part of the reason is that Hobbes is influenced by the scientific revolution to such an extent that he starts to doubt things that were miraculous, things like revelation. As he saw it, theologians tended to talk about things that they had no business talking about and couldn't know. Indeed, if you think about that clockwork universe, thinking about a watch, that clockwork universe that Newton proposed, Hobbes went a little bit further, suggesting that nothing was really beyond the material world. There wasn't any miraculous, there wasn't any angels, anything else like that. And so that leads to a lot of people being quite upset with him. As I noted, he lived during the time of the English Civil War, a time of great tension, great struggle, and that's what led him to produce the Leviathan, that principle of absolutism. But here's where he matters to the scientific revolution, is consider how he creates his political theory, his answer, which is absolutism. Well, he functionally places man under, if you will, a microscope. He examines society. Remember, when he's looking around at man in his natural state, he suggests that man lives a nasty, brutish, and short life. And so what this means is he's attempting to look at humanity and politics like a scientist. Let me observe what man is like and try and come up with a better hypothesis or a better answer. And in this case, his answer is that Leviathan, trying to create a strong enough society to overcome that natural base instinct of humanity he had observed. It's telling, for example, that this attitude he has towards government is part of the reason why Hobbes is not liked by absolutists. Remember what Louis XIV was all about. He was all about divine right. I'm the king and follow me because God tells you so. What is Hobbes saying? Hobbes is saying that rights are coming from the people giving them up to the king. He's not sanctifying kingly rule. He's not sanctifying monarchical rule. So in fact, some absolutists dislike Hobbes as much as future constitutionalists. But the real key in terms of connecting to the scientific revolution is you should see how he's trying to come up with a solution, if you will, that is scientific in nature by looking at man, observing man, and trying to come up with an answer for his problems. The other major thinker and figure, you should see this in the previous lecture, sort of a parallel, two thinkers that carry us through this. The other major thinker is John Locke. Born in 1632, he lived during the time of the English Civil War and the aftermath, the Glorious Revolution. He attended Oxford, but in terms of a connection, he started studying the classics but abandoned that because he started to become attracted to the ideas and philosophy of people like René Descartes. And during his lifetime, he started to champion a new system of thought and belief. And what was that? Well, Locke, in his essay concerning human understanding, suggested that in observing humanity, that people were, if you will, a blank slate, or in his own words, white paper. As he would say in his writings, let us suppose the mind to be, as we say, white paper, void of all characters, without any idea. How comes it to be furnished? To answer from experience. So this means that experience frames how people think about the world and how they are formed. Let me try and give you an example. If we are, as Locke proposed, white paper, our experiences inform how we live and how we are produced, or how we see the world. So let's say you were born to a pair of loving parents who cared for you, who built you up, who taught you to treat others with respect. Well, eventually you might become someone, a white paper that is inscribed with kindness, that you're a kind person to others. And so his argument would be your experiences, what you experience in life, helps make you a kind person. But let's say you were a white paper, as we all are, a tabula rasa, but you were with parents who were cruel, who taught you that certain races were superior to others, who filled your mind with hate. Well, instead of being a kind person, you would now become, say, a racist person. And the argument that Locke's making, in line with scientific belief, like that of Bacon, empiricism, and talking about sensory experiences, he would argue that who you are is not due to any innate qualities of yourself. You're always, if you will, a white paper. But the different experiences that you have end up producing the type of person you are. Now, you may think this is all sort of highfalutin philosophy and who cares, but if you think about it, this is the basis for so much of how modern society works. Education policy, governmental policy, everyone trying to improve the world. The thought is, let us build a better structure, let us build, if you will, better sensory experiences, and thus we will produce better people or a more harmonious world. But to return to political theory, Hobbes and Locke end up promoting two very different visions of government. While Hobbes champions the power of absolutist government, Locke instead champions power residing in the people. In his two treatises of government, for example, he takes you through a long argument that involves proving to you that power, the government's power, resides in the people, that they don't give it up absolutely, as Hobbes seemed to suggest to the king, but instead bequeath it to the government out of the belief that it will run things perhaps a bit more efficiently, that the people give up a little bit of their power in order to make life more sensible and more understanding. Now, in this, what you should see is that Locke is doing the very same thing Hobbes is. He is trying to observe society and observe the people around him, place humanity under a microscope, and what can I build from that? So again, keep in mind when he lives. Locke lives during the time of the Glorious Revolution. And what was that? That was a time in which power transferred peaceably from James II to William of Orange, as well as establishing that Parliament was supreme, that Parliament was above the king. And so observing this peaceful transfer of power, Locke's able to surmise, well, people can get along, people can cooperate, government can be sensible and strong, that life wasn't nasty, brutish, and short, but instead could be something cooperative. And so in the same way, you should see that Locke is trying to treat humanity scientifically as much as Hobbes is. Another sense of the changing ways of life or changing views of life is that Locke, living after a period of religious struggle, writes a letter concerning toleration. This letter is all about saying that religion is all about the saving of souls. The government should have no interest in it. The goal of government is to protect and keep the peace, and the church should be left to its own devices, to seek souls, to change minds, but otherwise the church should not depend on the state to enforce religious belief. Indeed, Locke argues in that document that when the state gets involved trying to enforce belief, it inhibits the true meaning of religion, the true purpose of religion. And so what this exposes is that this scientific attitude of life is starting to bring about a reshaping of an understanding of man, an understanding of politics, and even in the case of religion, or at least in terms of Locke's writing, a reshaping of the nature of the state, man, and religion in Western society.